So, where are you politically? Do you hate me now, or are you going to unsubscribe to me? Usually when I do videos like this, I always get someone on the far right or the far left mad at me, and they unsubscribe to me. It's a false left-right paradigm, folks. We have to understand the value of cooperating. That's why people are attracted to liberalism. In conservatism, what attracts these people? They see the evil of government. They see how government's being used to control us. It's a weapon system like food is. All of our needs are weapon systems. I explained this before. 12 essential needs, air, water, and food. They can poison those, not teach us how to live. Those other subsequent needs that are part of those 2 additional temporary needs, they can be used against us also. The media can be used against us. The government can be used against us. So why are people attracted to the far right, anarchy? Keeping in mind that anarchy doesn't work, 100% anarchy doesn't work in a sick world. It's what we get in an ideal world. And why are people wanting less government? Because they see the threat government has to our liberties. They understand, or some of them do, that the powers that be are using the government to go through these cycles. Remember, it all started with oligarchy. That's what created the monopolies, the aristocracies, and the democracies. And then democracies go through these stages where they end up independence. Now we're back into the mob rule again. Hate to admit it, but growing up watching TV, watching the popular shows, they programmed my mind to think left. And it was an easy sell, because who doesn't want to cooperate and give to people who are in need? But you have to understand that's what gets us in trouble. As we get into this dependency stage of democracy, people realize, hey, I'm going to vote for Joe Blow, and he's going to give me all these things I'm wanting. Not realizing that's going to be the decline of our country. That's why a middle class is so important. I've explained that before. The powers that be look at the world as 2 main groups. Third world countries don't have a middle class. 40,000 children dying every day. They're easy to control. Industrialized countries, they have a middle class, and it's needed to pay the taxes and to make things better, but they have to be killed or culled every century or so often, because that's what the powers that be fear the most. Remember, last century, 262 million people were murdered during peacetime by their governments. It's called democide. You can Google that. That's a study done at the University of Hawaii. And as Aristotle pointed out when he said that there are the Cycle cycles, he came up with 8 things we need to do to make sure this cycle doesn't repeat itself. One of them, we have to be educated about history. We got to find the truth about history so it doesn't repeat itself. But then he said we have to have a large middle class. And guess what? Point number 16 was in these 25 points of the NSDAP. We demand that we create a large middle class. That was Hitler's crime. He knew how to destroy the powers that be. That's why Germany went from the poorest country to the richest country in 4 years. They called it the German miracle. Hitler, Time Magazine's Man of the Year in 1938. The whole world was looking at Germany saying, what are you guys doing? Powers that be couldn't have that. So they had to attack them. Did the same thing to Japan. Did the same thing to Gaddafi in Libya. When you break away from the powers that be, don't let someone print your money, we start prospering. Remember, truth, courage, liberty, abundance. That's what Germany proved to the world. We live on an abundant planet. Just by finding how they're controlling us. Absolute tool control money. I'm going to print it, loan it to you, create debt. Should never exist. Now you're going to be debt slaves. Now your children will be born into debt, bondage. Be working for us. It's an illusion. Then we've got the ultimate tool of control, our health. It's all about us being sick. And we'll never figure that out as long as the powers that be control all the money and can continue to control our educational systems, so we can't even do what Aristotle says we have to have, a good education. If you don't want history to repeat itself, open up your mind. Entertain a thought without accepting it. consider the possibility there might be some of those 25 points that you might agree with. I looked at them and there wasn't one I didn't think was not reasonable, and I would trade for an instant. This whole planet would be better off if everyone adopted these 25 points that Hitler and Drexler brought up in 1920. We'd be better off, mainly because it did away with usury. Now, there are other programs that did away with usury, and we'd still be better off. The key here has to do with knowledge of how to live, the ultimate tool of control. Because even if we can take away control of our money from someone else, if we don't understand that we can't control ourselves, that the mob is out of control, everything is going to cycle back around. Once again, if we look at how the Clico cycle started with oligarchy, monarchy, aristocracy, and democracy, and how democracy ends up with dependency. The last stage, mob rule, we're going to vote all of our money away. Mob rule, we've got to have someone controlling us. The mob rule is what created the need for a government. It's a subsequent need. We shouldn't have it. We need anarchy, but people who are pushing anarchy now don't realize it doesn't work when the mob is out of control. And this is what we don't seem to understand. If we're incapable of self-control, then group control is out of the question also. So the whole concept of government has failed to begin with. And yet, in order to get where we need to be, we might need to look at some of the principles in fascism to see which ones we can use. We don't have to adopt all of them. Although it was all based on the principle of autarky. The most important thing that was behind the success of the German people was to have a common interest and a common purpose for the betterment of their country. Common interest before individual interest. It's a simple concept. And it appeals to a large group of people because deep down we know we're supposed to help people. But when we have sick people who are controlling everything and trying to make these cycles go through these cycles or stages of democracy to go through the same cycle so we go right back to bondage again, as long as they're in control, it's going to happen. So there's a lot of things we can do downstream, folks, to start making this world better and help us reach the tipping point. One is to realize that socially used properly really should be socially owned. We've got to stop the privatization of certain industries that are used against us. Remember, all it takes is a belief in something and you can create an entire industry that should not even exist. So, am I a Democrat, a Republican, a Libertarian, an anarchist, socialist, collectivist, communist? No, no, no.